What's up, guys? How's it going? It's me, Dakota Fishman, and today I just thought I'd kind of discuss the old Art of Lords Mobile. You know, the day when we didn't have Astrolite, we didn't have Mythic Gear, and we didn't have 11k heroes. 'Cause, yeah, that was a thing. Back in the day, there was only Legendary Gear. And get this, once upon a time, we used to joke about T5, way before T5 was a thing. Oh, and by the way, did you realize that, for the longest time, if you were to go up and you click on this little gift icon, right? Did you know that at one point in time, it didn't matter what might you were? Meaning that you could be like really low level and gift up. Meaning you could gift to somebody that's a billion might when you're only 20 mil. Yeah, that was a thing at one time, back in the old days. They used to call it the T4 pipeline. Namely, a YouTuber named King HTV popularized it, and Shorty Doowop was kind of the major main account that they used for quite some time. I don't know if Synergy88 had ever really gotten involved in that or not, but there was always rumors that the Sugar accounts, LHFam, and them had been somewhat at least pooling their resources together in some capacity to max out accounts. Meaning that, okay, instead of using, say, the individual wallets of one person, it was effectively easier to have everyone in the guild pool their money together to max one account out at a time. And that's effectively what a T4 pipeline was. They were funneling all their gems and everything into one account and making that one account as beastly as possible to then use it in wage war. And it was a pretty effective strategy back in the day. Also, back in the day, they also had there was a number of things that probably sound foreign as hell to most people nowadays, but at one point in time, there was actually something called a Wii Gamers. And if you've never heard of Wii Gamers, it was basically a mobile app that you got on your phone. And it was something that IGG had made, and they pushed it out through the settings icon. And you would basically go here to watch streams. You could get bundles for watching streams, and you got points every day that you could collect. They had something called Game Celebs, and so people like Worthy Prince, Sneaky Tashi, myself, and a few other notable YouTubers had been prominent on Wii Gamers, and I was happy to be contracted with them back in the day, but we would stream for a certain number of hours per week as part of some requirement. I remember doing 12-hour streams on it on a regular basis. But back in the old days, the main thing with Lords Mobile back then, right, is they had like the Lords tournament with Asia. So if in fact you can still find it to this day, you can just look up Lords Tournament Asia, and effectively S8S and a couple of guilds basically had like their own version of the client, and they went out it and fought, and it was just kind of like this little event that they did. But they pushed it out through Wii Gamers, and so everybody was forced to kind of get onto Wii Gamers to watch it. Or at least that's what they tried to do. Now, the demise of Wii Gamers is kind of an interesting one, and I can kind of start off by pointing out that, like, one of the things that you could do in Wii Gamers at one point is they integrated it so that you could actually talk in your guild chat. However, they didn't filter what you typed in. And so effectively what that meant was, back in the day, you could pull up Wii Gamers and you could curse, you could do all kinds of crap that you weren't supposed to be able to do. And so you could basically cuss, you name it, and do it in your guild chat for a long time. Eventually, Wii Gamers kind of disappeared. So too did that go along with it. But part of that, I think, really kind of happened for a number of reasons. It wasn't really exactly a popular app to begin with. It really kind of had a hard beginning. The moderation teams were really not paid per se, so a lot of it was, you had a lot of people that contributed a lot of their own time and effort to moderate the forums inside Wii Gamers, and they didn't really get anything in return. And conveniently, over time, as the platform grew, it was a little unwieldy. You got thousands and thousands of just generally really toxic crap that showed up on Wii Gamers. It got to the point where certain forums were pushing everything from spam campaigns to malware to some of the worst stuff that you could think of on the internet. You know, and it got to a point where I feel like that platform just ultimately the moderation behind it and the people that would pay attention to Wii gamers on the surface of it, they just really kind of took a step back and just really didn't pay very much attention. And it wasn't really until a few months prior that they really kind of did a formal exit of the whole application and really brought it to its knees and eventually disappeared the app. Uh, but I guess I kind of bring this up, right? Because it's kind of in Lloyd's Mobile's history as far as stuff that has just kind of occurred. It's just been around. I just happened to be around at the time. That said, now of course, a lot of people have always wondered like whatever happened to all of the bundles and everything. And a lot of what has happened is, like if you're somebody that was still curious, like where can I get bundles, codes, all that jazz, a lot of that is now in Discord. Discord is turned into effectively what Wii Gamers once was. It's this giant forum. They've got a handful of people I would assume probably aren't being paid to moderate what they're doing. And so it's a giant forum from which the Lloyd's community is kind of gathered around. And, the creator turf events and such that they've done, well, yeah, sure, IGG is kind of acquiring and owning the ownership of whatever those videos are being sent out to produce. It's kind of a weird ordeal. If you're a YouTube creator, you probably wouldn't be too jumpy on doing it. But the main thing is that with that, there, and this is something else. Back in the day, at least in the early days of Lloyd's Mobile, they had the YouTube Creator Program, and the YouTube Creator Program was paying anywhere between 20 to 100,000 gems to give YouTubers effectively gems in return for making content. And there was a large number of prominent YouTubers that, even to this day, I think, were still getting large sums of gems from IGG. And, and some people would claim, oh, well, that's kind of unfair, right? But back then, it was a pretty big deal because, 25 to 100,000 gems was pretty hard to come by. Nowadays, it's a dime a dozen. You've got everything from Kingdom Tycoon to the Labyrinth to artifacts now, that it's just so many different places for you to spend. In fact, even now, you've got the familiars, and a lot of people just don't really think much about it. But I mean, really, truly imagine this is just a giant ice sheet. There were no familiars. There was no artifact building. There was no trial by fire. There was no Kingdom Tycoon. There was, however, a labyrinth. They had all of that. There was no lunar foundry. So a lot of this stuff did not exist. The Sanctuary did not exist. The Dark Essence Island here did not exist. A lot of that stuff, yeah, that was not there in the back in the old days. Okay, castle skins even. I mean, really, even that. The concept of decorating your castle. Yeah, no, that's an old concept. It used to be this: the classic skin. That was it. There was not really any other shit. And even when they did, for a really, really long time, it started out with like these, and you didn't really have, very much options. And it really wasn't until a few months later that you started to see like Ancient Pyramid, Gingerbread, Shadowkeep, Forbidden Hall, Dragon Manor. A lot of these would come up, I mean, even now, it's like even these are kind of foreign to me, like Woodland Warren, Macabre Mansion, and Aurora Fantasia, or even some of this event-specific skins that people have come over and seen over time. Like, for example, if you look at Avatrex or Sparta, you've probably noticed that they have this really interesting castle skin that is kind of unique to them and them only. So let's I can even show you, and I still remember how they actually acquired it, because on Wii Gamers there was an event where effectively all you had to do was get a very large number of people to vote for your I believe that basically the vote, you had to get like a certain number of people to vote for your, either it was your video or something like that. I don't know, my memory on this is terrible, but basically they selected like the top 10. And so a lot of the people that have that castle skin got it in part because of that event. And so it's a really kind of a more of a creator specific castle skin. So you really won't see that castle skin hardly anywhere except for the people that have participated in that. I happen to say that back at the time, I actually made a bunch of crap over it because BKRR actually paid money to funnel votes to win, which I still won't forget that. You know, there was a large number of people that were effectively paying people off for votes to get the castle skin, which is a pretty scummy thing to do, but that's what they did. Uh, you know, a lot of people have, you know, heard about the Sugar family, or even like, you know, some of the stories that was kind of, you know, happening between a lot of the major guilds. You know, it's like not a lot of people realize that, you know, between Sugar Fam supposedly being, you know, well, what's the word that people like to use, sponsored, right? You know, a lot of the sponsored accounts now, you don't even know, you know, if Sugar Fam's a thing anymore. You know, it's kind of funny because if you look up SGE, you know, a once, you know, well-known guild back in 2017 and 2018, no longer, no more. There's no more in SGE that people, you know all so well. It just doesn't exist. It's no longer a thing. No, it used to be, but it just doesn't hold the ground that it used to. And that's, you know, that comes with time. You know, a lot of people are probably wondering what happened. And I don't know. I think they themselves can tell their story better than I. But what I can tell you is that, you know, like a lot of what has happened in Lords Mobile's history is that, you know, over time it is gradually but definitely gotten worse over time when it comes to looking at what people's accounts have gotten to. You know, it's like people have gotten to such ridiculous amounts of troops. Like, for example, if you're just curious, how many troops does Bryn Jong have? He has 507 million troops. Out of that, he has three 100 million T3. So, as in, he has 300 million T3, 100 million per type. He's got 35 million T4 per type. Guy doesn't have hardly any T5, and he's got 25 million to 35 million T2. He had 35 mil in range and then 25 mil in infant gav, and that was within the last, you know, 2 days from this video that I've just posted today. So ultimately, the history behind, you know, Bryn Chong and a lot of other notable accounts like that, you know, they're pretty ridiculous, right? A lot of the troop counts and stuff like that, not entirely implausible to rally them out, but you just don't see any collective action by large numbers of guilds anymore. But in case people are wondering, is in 359, and really it wouldn't be a huge, you know, I don't think it'd be a huge jump to go over there and rally them out. I don't think it would be nowadays. But I point this out because, you know, it's like, back in the day, it used to be a real improbability that that would ever happen. But I actually think in 2022, my prediction is that it will happen. These 10 billion might players will get zeroed out one day. I think it'll happen. I don't know if we'll ever see a group of YouTuber guilds come together to do this, but I know that someday someone's going to try this. It's just a question of when. Even though the ridiculous side of that is the chances are they would rather shield than actually take the number of rallies that would probably be involved to even zero an account like that. It just wouldn't be. I just don't see how they would ever allow it to happen. But like I said, it's one of those things that, yeah, it could happen. It's just you have to get the right place, the right time, and probably a little luck involved. That said, you know, with the history of the game, you know, between Wii Gamers and Bryn Chong, and even like some of the stuff that happened between Worthy Prince and Snaky Tashi back in the day, or little bits and pieces of Worthy Prince and Ava tracks, or even before that, there was Stridox and BNNCZ3. Which, you know, if you're not familiar with those channels, Stridox was kind of like this guy that essentially opened up kind of a dialogue for small players to fight larger players. And it was kind of this little inner dialogue for him, I think, where he was effectively running his guild and kind of, you know, trying to push the envelope as far as what people were willing to allow. BNNZ3 was kind of I don't know, kind of an interesting one, and that his story is a little different from a lot of others, and that his channel kind of blew up. I think if I remember right, it was just kind of like it's kind of a, I don't know if it was a joke, but I think it was like some, I remember him telling me about it, where it was like, it was something that, I don't, it was provocative in nature, that much I do know. But it was enough to get enough people interested in his channel, and it conveniently, he happened to make a ton of tutorials. And so at this time, it's like there weren't really that many tutorial channels out there for Lords Mobile. There was Lady Callista, Avatrax, but then you had people like VNNZC3 that were coming in and saying, hey, this is how you build a rally trap, or this is how you would build well, not necessarily a rally trap, but like how to rally lead, how to hit dart nests, he had like a lot of content out there, and then he basically one day decided to move on from Lords Mobile and effectively deleted his channel and picked up everything he had and left. And then he did come back shortly for a little while, and then eventually I think he kind of just left the game. And I don't know what his whereabouts are nowadays, but I know that was a big thing, at least for the people that knew him. But like even with a lot of the YouTubers that I've mentioned, there's a lot of YouTubers out there that also get kind of forgotten. There's a lot of trap counts like Truly King and I mean I could name off like probably a half a dozen different trap players that have gotten zeroed and then quit the game. So it's like there's a dime a dozen of trap YouTubers out there that they're popular. They throw music on top of their videos. You know who they are, and then they get zeroed, and or they get to a point where they just don't enjoy the game and effectively end up leaving, right? And even myself, I left back in June, back in 21, after I gotten zeroed and just kind of took a step back from the game for quite some time, and came back here in like I think in November of that year, and was surprised to find that IGG had added artifacts and added all the stuff that I was like, when I first came back, I'm like, what the hell are they doing? What is this stuff that they've added to the game since I've came back from the game that I used to play? And it's just in the number of years that have changed, it's the whole history of Lords Mobile has changed so drastically that I think one could make an argument, though, that IGG really ought to revisit the esports side of Lords Mobile back in the day, because they'd kind of tried to push it, but it just didn't really succeed. But I still think, even to this day, that it's like effectively a battle royale is their attempt at that. It's just that the fair gaming environment that we've all come to expect from this game has never really come into fruition, because you've got shield bots, and you've got botting that occurs in the game that's pretty much ruined any chances of that ever actually happening. If there wasn't rain bots and a ludicrous amount of shield botting going on today, I don't think it would be unfathomable to see them actually go out of their way to actually kind of add back some of that kind of stuff. Now, I don't know about you, but the Verge way, when they added this, I still think this is their excuse for calling this game a fort battle game. I still don't understand why they added it. The Verge way is still one of those, I don't know why it exists, and I mean, granted, it works. It's like Trial by Fire in a sense. I don't know why they added it. It's a thing. You can auto sweep now, which before it made somewhat sense for someone to have to pick 1, 2, 3, and so on. But now you can just auto sweep. So now it's like, okay, so you've effectively added another mechanic for me to get guild coins, artifacts, and occasionally rares like Terror Thorn Seeds, Jade Orbs. I would assume the other two are probably going to be related to different gear sets. But I mean, even then, as you rank your way up in the levels in Trial by Fire, it kind of begs the question of like, what is IGG going to do for legacy mechanics of the game that have been around forever? Like, for example, whatever happened to T5 traps? Did they just forget that walls existed, or did they just kind of decide that that this is a mechanic that really should just be scrapped out? Because I still don't understand why wall traps can't be viable in 2022. And that's coming from somebody that, you know, I imagine the free-to-play community would really appreciate it if IGG would take a look at that, because that's something that, frankly, it's a viable playstyle, but they've pretty much abandoned it. And so it's completely useless and not worth anyone's time, even though they've got gear in the game that supports that playstyle. Now, you know, of course, you know, the one thing that has always baffled me with IGG and the way in which they design their game is that, you know, even now it's like off the top of my head, why the hell is it that we have familiars in the game like Jade Orb that don't have any army talent? Okay, like what's up with that? Like, or, you know, for the fact that, you know, okay, if we go into the gear sets, okay, I can tell you that there has to be another gear set in the game at some point. And you know the why I make that assessment? It's because, all right, you have the Polar Ring, you have Cavern range damage, you've got Infant range damage coming out of the Grand and Great, you know, as you already know it. You know, it's like this 35% buff, right? The thing is the Infant Cav equivalent of this is the Book of the Dead, you know, coming out of the Necrosis set. So you have a 35-35 here. But the noticeable problem here is this is not buffing HP like this is. So this is not really kind of the same thing. While it exists, it's not the same. But like you look at Bon Appetit's, you know, Ambrosial Cup, and they're buffing HP. So I kind of question if they'll ever actually make another accessory that buffs HP here, because it's kind of questionable why the hell this is Cav Defense rather than Cav HP. Why the hell did they do that? I don't know, but I'm really curious, IGG. What the hell were you thinking when you made this? You know, but little things like that. You know, it's like I notice it in the gear, so I naturally, progression in this game has always been questionable. Now, I think there's always been a theory of thought that they'd always add Baron gear. And I actually still kind of think that they could potentially do this because, you know, you already know that there's gear in the game for Emperor. The problem has always been, okay, how do you deal with an Emperor set? It's almost impossible to deal with somebody that has Emperor. Yeah, a full set of Emperor is going to be pretty damn difficult to fight because you have to acquire Emperor from being a Emperor in Battle Royale by winning. So if you're fighting an Emperor or a pre-existing Emperor, the only person that can take the throne of the Emperor is either the guy that's already Emperor or the guy decides to quit and the next guy comes up in line. Otherwise, it's just a bloody freaking mess in order to get there, right? So I really question, like, where's the end game going for the top high-end players? You know, it's like even for the high-end players, it's kind of a mess, right? Now, castle skins have been kind of an interesting development over the years. You know, they've added all these tweaks to make, you know, night and day cycles. And I really kind of like what they did with the map as far as changing it to where you have mountains. Because, yeah, the map looked like shit back in the day. And frankly, it loaded like shit. This is probably a little bit better, but I still kind of complain about this loading crap that happens. And by the way, just for anybody that has food for thought, during Kingdom Hunters, I ran into this glitch not once but twice. But basically, if you hit a fort fast enough using boots, if you speed up fast enough, you can actually glitch it out, and then you can't update your client or anything. You have to back out and open it back in. And if you know what I mean, effectively it means if you took over the fort, it would still show the other alliance owning the fort, and then you would have castles that should be there but are invisible to you. And yeah, it's a real bloody mess that they have on their hands, but it's a bug and it happens. And you know, I'm just publicly complaining about it now, but you know, hey, you know, little things that you notice. Now, of course, you know, I noticed that they do have 100% attack boosts in the game. That wasn't a thing in the back when I played. You know, they had 70 boosts, but not 100% attack boosts. And if you're wondering, where do you get these? Well, if you are in the middle of the artifact event, they actually give you, in the artifact challenge, okay, you'll get speed up training, you get epic records, and then you get the Phoenix Feather, which increases your cab and blah, 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 right? But in one of these events, you actually ended up getting a 100% attack boost. And I know I've seen it somewhere. It may have not been that event, but there was another event where you could get 100% attack boosts. So that's a thing, you know, which wasn't back in the game, back in the old day. You know, there's just a lot of little stuff like that that, I could go on and on and on about, but it's part of the old game. So, where can they kind of improve as far as like little itty bitty things is really anyone's guess. I'm still of the opinion that they need an elite version of the Tycoon. I might be in a minority there, but I think an elite version of Tycoon would be a worthwhile endeavor, to be quite honest with you. I don't really know why it is that certain familiars don't have abilities, but I think there needs to be a rework here with these that don't have any army talents, because that's just baffling to me. Like, why aren't there army talents for heroes or familiars for that matter? It's just weird. Like, why isn't there? It really ought to be. And then, for heroes like Pegasus, for example, how the hell are people going to be able to get access to this guy? It was an event that, it was kind of like something that people got, simply because, oh yeah, we were doing an event where people could play with this, basically get rewards for this one hero. But it's like, okay, effectively, this is now something that is just there. It exists, but you've got to be somebody that's played this game long enough and happen to have them. If you do, cool. If you don't, well, that's that's just there. It's just like one of those things that it's just kind of there. It's kind of like when I look around and I see Kung Fu Panda castle skins littered all over the map. Which, by the way, wasn't the most pleasant thing to see to the naked eye. I really wish they hadn't done that. I like the emote, but God forbid, if I have an unpopular opinion, it's that damn castle skin is an eyesore for me. I really wish they didn't have it. I really don't like this castle skin at all. This castle skin's existence, in my opinion, is the worst thing that happened to this game. Maybe that's too harsh, but I just don't like it. I just don't. But outside of that, I mean, really about the only other thing, I guess I could say, which was, and this happened a while ago, but there was actually one time where they had all of their servers, and I can't remember exactly what the circumstances were, but effectively what happened was the game servers shut down and then relaunched. And when they did, everyone's stats was all sorts of foobar. Okay, we're talking like to the point where the game was so utterly broken that you would go into like the rankings tab and there were people that were negative 999 billion might. There were integer errors all over the damn place. There were people that had negative 900 billion gold and 900 billion gems and everything in between. It was like a complete nightmare scenario, and it actually happened. Like, if you've ever thought to yourself, like, for example, like, there's always these YouTube videos that you'll find on, and don't fall for this shit, right? But you'll find people that are claiming that you can get gems, give me your password and your email, or more importantly, let me install something on your phone. Like, sorry, none of that shit works. If you think it does, I hate to break it to you, it doesn't. It's not. It's a scam. It's not. It's not possible, okay? But you'd be surprised how many people, I guess, fall for that. I'm sure if I went back and looked at the metrics of it, I'm sure there's enough people that get posed that way and fall for it and then think, yes. Yeah, but you gotta be smarter than the average teddy bear, so I don't know. But ultimately, that is pretty much the history that I've come to know with the game over the number of years. It's just I kind of like to bring it up because I don't think a lot of people talk about it. And I just got to meet the General Pickle not too long ago, and General Pickle had kind of mentioned a lot of the stuff on his 1K, his first 1,000 subscribers, which if you've never heard of General Pickle, make sure to check him out. He's got a video on Bren Chong that you may or may not have seen, so I highly recommend checking his channel out because he does a lot of... He kind of covers, like, both Lords Mobile Legends, I think is one of his series, but he's just got kind of an interesting set of content that you won't really find anywhere else in the Lords Mobile community. That I honestly recommend anybody to come by and check. So if you watch my channel, totally take a check out on that guy, because he's got some pretty cool stuff. But outside of that, I'm trying to think of what else there was. Oh yeah, that's right. The only other thing that I thought was kind of something that was kind of a running joke for the longest time, and I still think this is going to happen. So God forbid if I'm right, but mythic heroes. If it's like any other joke, okay, and the jokes have come back to haunt us every fucking time. It's that mythic heroes will be a thing. And God forbid if mythic heroes will be a thing. I honestly think they will be, but let me know in the comment section below if you think my theory is correct, because I honestly, privately think it will come into fruition one day. I really do. That said, thank you guys for watching, and make sure you check out General Pickle, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I don't know why you wander and stare. Don't subscribe. Kind of helps the channel if you would. At the very minimum, leave a like. That said, I'll see you guys in the next video.